Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Stay vigilant this Thanksgiving. CargoNet is warning of a troubling trend in cargo thefts over the long holiday weekend. Keith Lewis of CargoNet talks about how organized crime rings have helped shift the landscape. Cybersecurity concerns are also on the rise. Ashley Blackford speaks with Ben Wilkins and Joe Orr of the National Motor Freight Traffic Association about what they're seeing and how you can protect yourself. And finally, we've spoken on the show recently about a proposed FMCSA rule that would require much greater broker transparency, but there has been pushback from brokers. I'll get an overview of what's happening from Bryce Mongeon of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The National Transportation Safety Board has determined that oversight failures and driver fatigue were contributing factors in a deadly crash involving a Freightliner box truck and a bus. It happened in early 2023 in Louisville, New York, when a box truck crossed over the center line of State Route 37 and collided with a bus traveling in the opposite direction. 6 people were killed, several others were injured. An NTSB investigation found that oversight was lacking, with NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy pointing the finger at various state and federal agencies, including the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration as well. Homendy said everyone could have and should have done more to prevent the horrific crash and tragic loss of life. Part of that failure in oversight included FMCSA's new Entrance Safety Assurance Program, which determines a new carrier's ability to operate safely, as well as the agency's compliance review process. The board said FMCSA failed to consider the prior safety performance of the trucking company, Aero Global Logistics. NTSB found it to be a chameleon carrier, one that uses system to mask its poor safety rating. During a recent presentation, Michael Fox, a senior highway accident investigator with NTSB, said regulators missed a number of signs.
The Louisville crash represents another example of deficiencies in FMCSA's oversight of new entrant carriers.
Several issues popped up during the investigation. NTSB says Aero Global had a history of hours of service violations, lacked a structured fatigue management program, and did not use driver monitoring systems. All were cited as contributing factors in the crash. The truck's driver had worked for the company overnight from 1 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for less than 3 weeks at the time of the crash. The crash occurred on the driver's 5th consecutive overnight shift. As a result of the probe, the NTSB has recommended that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration adopt regulations that would require all new commercial motor vehicles with a gross weight over 10,000 pounds to be equipped with lane departure technology. President-elect Trump has named his pick to lead the Department of Labor. It's Oregon Congresswoman Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who lost her bid for re-election earlier this month. The freshman member of Congress served on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where she was one of just 3 House Republicans who supported the PRO Act, the bill aimed at making it easier for workers to organize unions. If confirmed, she would succeed current Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, whose nomination for the full gig was stalled out over her previous support for California's AB 5 law and other issues. The American Trucking Associations is calling on heavy truck manufacturers to end their clean truck partnership with the California Air Resources Board. The call came in the form of a letter addressed to the leaders of Cummins, International Motors, Volvo Trucks North America, and Daimler, signed by ATA President and CEO Chris Spear. 2 events appear to have spurred the move, President-elect Trump's win earlier this month being one. Spear wrote that the shifting political landscape creates an opportunity to course-correct the impossible emission timelines and targets laid out by California and the Environmental Protection Agency. Spear called for more achievable national standards that put the trucking industry on a sustainable and successful path towards a zero-emissions vehicle future. The letter also comes on the heels of a fresh lawsuit filed by Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hildress against the same truck manufacturers and the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association. Hildress is accusing them of conspiring with California to reduce the availability of internal combustion engine trucks in favor of electric ones. The American Trucking Association is tracking some new signs of recovery in the freight market. The ATA for-hire truck tonnage index for October was up 1.2% compared to September, when the index slipped a bit. Compared to last October, tonnage was down 0.5 percentage point. ATA chief economist Bob Costello said the slow and choppy climb off of the bottom continued last month, but since hitting a low in January, tonnage is up a total of 3%. He said there's no doubt the freight market has improved, albeit slowly, over the course of this year. Truck drivers who took part in a new survey from TruckStop and Bloomberg Intelligence remain cautiously optimistic that a turnaround in the freight market is coming soon. While spot rates were still suppressed through the third quarter, 29% of carriers expect rates to improve over the next 3 to 6 months. That's 6 points higher than the survey yielded 3 months ago. And a growing number of carriers also expect higher volume throughout the first half of 2025, but time is running short. 15% of respondents expect to be out of the industry in the next 6 months, a higher percentage compared to earlier this year, which ironically could speed up the recovery process and help prop rates back up. 7 people have been arrested in North Texas and stand accused of a multi-million-dollar cargo theft ring. The Grapevine Police Department told WFAA that their break in the case came from security camera video of one of the heists months ago. Investigative work in conjunction with other agencies led to the arrests. Police say the group is responsible for burglaries totaling more than $10 million in 5 cities in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, dating back to at least last summer. This group mostly targeted shipments of high-end electronics. Keith Lewis, vice president of operations at CargoNet, said organized crime groups are targeting trucks carrying items they can likely sell off quickly, and they've got several ways to do that.
So the bad guys aren't stealing anything that nobody won't buy. So if nobody's buying spaghetti sauce, the bad guys aren't going to steal it. Also, they have the opportunity, ability, and jeopardy. So it's the opportunity's there. There's the chink in the armor. We found the hole in the fence of somebody's supply chain where they've got 25 loads to move. I've stolen some carrier's identity, even though, albeit on the federal website, it says I only have 1 truck. But for the broker, the shipper that says I got 20 loads to move, and somebody calls them and says I'll take 10 of them, you've just made my day. I'm giving you all 10 because it's the path of least resistance. So they find that opportunity to go after it.
Much more from Keith Lewis a little later on in today's program. An emergency declaration in Florida, initially issued in October due to Hurricane Milton, has again been extended. The emergency, now in effect until December 1st, suspends registration requirements for commercial motor vehicles that are entering Florida to help with relief efforts. International Fuel Tax Agreement, International Registration Plan, and Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles Administrative Fees are waived under this emergency. The exemption applies to intrastate and interstate commerce. An FMCSA regional emergency also remains in effect for Florida through December 2nd. That same order is in effect through December 11th in Georgia and December 26th in North Carolina and Tennessee. Meanwhile, the South Carolina Department of Transportation says 10 bridges damaged by Hurricanes Debbie and Helene will need to be replaced. For more details on which bridges are affected, we've got a list over on our website, landline.media. And finally, Travel Centers of America has opened up a new location in Texas. It's in Houston off Interstate 610. The location includes 70 truck parking spaces, laundry facilities, and all the other amenities you've come to expect from a TA location. That's Laneline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Alan B. Kitzhaber of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 33 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 248 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rotella. Next, Scott Thompson discusses holiday weekend cargo theft dangers with Keith Lewis of CargoNet, and Ashley Blackford covers cybersecurity concerns with Ben Wilkins and Joe Orr of the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Truck revived. Deliveries thrive.
Truckdown.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
And we're back. You might be looking ahead to the long Thanksgiving holiday weekend, and sadly, the cargo thieves are too. CargoNet is out with a new warning about the threat of cargo theft over the coming days, and joining us with the details is Keith Lewis, CargoNet's Vice President of Operations. Keith, how we doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for reaching out.
So you're out with this new report. We know that criminals out there view holidays as perfect opportunities to create problems for people out there. It appears that this Thanksgiving holiday weekend in particular has you and CargoNet a bit more concerned than usual. What are you seeing out there that's raising alarm bells for you?
Obviously, we've got the Thanksgiving weekend coming up, and that's one of the longer holiday weekends that we have. It's typically, everybody thinks they're off on Thursday or Friday or both, but really people start shutting things down Tuesday evening, Wednesday at noon. You know, the whole supply chain kind of comes to a halt. We're in that euphoric time of the year. We've got the holiday shopping on Friday, and folks come back to work Monday morning. Drivers want to spend the weekend home with their families. So it's a very opportunistic time of the year for the criminals to look for vehicles that are parked that aren't moving on the highway right now. Also, if we move over to the fraud side of the business, if I'm going to commit a fraud, that gives me more time to get away with the fraud until the victim realizes that I've stolen someone's identity.
Yeah, and that's really we talk all the time about traditional cargo theft, and I think everybody's familiar with that. The fraud aspect of this, as you know, and we all know, has really picked up in recent years. And as you point out there, it's an opportunity for the criminals out there to kind of get away with it maybe for a few more days than they normally would. You've been tracking the rise in both of these types of crimes over the past few years. We've talked to you about them before. With Thanksgiving in particular, as we keep that in mind, how does it track with other holidays? It sounds like from what you're saying here that this is a bigger target for criminals out there.
It is. And if you look at last year's numbers, which is in our holiday advisory, I think we had $7 million stolen in just these few days.
That's a lot.
So, again, it's a very difficult time of the year. It's a big push. The other issue we've got here is, it's important to mention, this is kind of the big push for the end of the year. So if you think about inventory carrying costs and all those things that people want to get out of their warehouse, they're going to start pushing them out about this time of the year, so they don't have to sit on that inventory at the end of the year. The other thing is this is the last big push before Christmas to get goods to the market. So typically the supply chain works on a pull. People are buying things and they're pulling them through the supply chain. This time of year, it's more of a push where the manufacturers, retailers are anticipating the Christmas sales, so they're actually going to start over-pushing items out to the market so the shelf, for lack of better terms, the shelves aren't empty. People can go to the store and buy what they want, and then they'll deal with the returns after the holidays. You know, a lot of it comes in with accounting practice about booking revenue and taxes and things like that. So this is probably one of the most dangerous times of the year for the supply chain.
And you've got your finger on the pulse, and obviously you're looking at all the aspects of this. I think one thing that's interesting to look at with all these reports that come out over the course of a year is which commodities the criminals are targeting. You know, a lot of these are crimes of opportunity, but at the same time, they're looking for specific things. In terms of product, what types of things are the criminals targeting right now more than others, I suppose?
Well, the shift from, say, 20 years ago was the unorganized criminals were stealing food and beverage, and the organized criminals were stealing pharmaceutical, tobacco products, and electronics. That has shifted to where if it's a high-value commodity food product, say like alcoholic beverages, you've got organized crime rings going after that. You also have organized crime rings going after lower-value food products because it's an easy product to sell. It's an easy product to store. Nobody gets suspicious when they see a shipment of spaghetti sauce in a warehouse. It's spaghetti sauce that the bad guy's warehousing somewhere at a cross dock at this time. So it's an opportunistic time, but we can't take our eye off electronics and other things. One of the things that rose up the last couple of years was solar panels. We saw a huge increase in solar panels because of the push to electric. That's kind of died down, and now we're back on the virtual reality headsets. That seems to be the hot topic. But if you said, hey, what's been the big thing in the last couple of weeks? I'd say tequila. That's been a big commodity to be stolen, tequila.
Tequila, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm wondering about this because we talk about the different products that are targeted. I can't imagine that these criminals are, getting together at a meeting every week and saying, "Hey, this week it's tequila, guys. Let's go get it." How do these things kind of play out? I suppose in terms of what they are targeting. Is it just demand out there? How does that dynamic work? And I don't know if you know the answer to it, but I find it interesting.
So it's a good question with a complex answer. So the bad guys aren't stealing anything that nobody won't buy. So if nobody's buying spaghetti sauce, the bad guys aren't going to steal it. Also, they have the opportunity, ability, and jeopardy. So it's the opportunity's there. There's the chink in the armor. We found the hole in the fence of somebody's supply chain where they've got 25 loads to move. I've stolen some carrier's identity, even though, albeit on the federal website, it says I only have one truck. But for the broker, the shipper that says I got 20 loads to move, and somebody calls them and says I'll take 10 of them, you've just made my day. I'm giving you all 10 because it's the path of least resistance. So they find that opportunity to go after it. One of the other things that we're seeing a big increase on is bill of lading forgeries, where somebody ships 50 loads to a consignee. The bad guy now I can't tell you how on this call, but I know how. They forged the bill of lading, the proof of delivery, so the shipper or the broker or the trucker gets back delivered clear, no exceptions, and they've only delivered 3 of the 25 pallets. And when the PO's closed out and reconciled, 6-7 months later, then that's when the claim comes, and by that time the bad guy's a ghost. And there's no breadcrumb trail to chase them. So there's a lot of different methods. There's a lot of different ways they do it, but what's the driving factor is the why is money. The how is very complicated, but the why, it's simple. It's money. We
have seen fraud, cargo theft, you name it here. We've talked about it. We've seen it rise just like a firework here in recent years. And you talk about the ways in which it's being done. It's clear that we know the ways in which it's being done. How much progress are we seeing from law enforcement to do something about this and actually crack down and catch these folks and hold them accountable and get the situation under control? Are we seeing progress there?
I'd say yes. Here's how I look at it. And I've been in this cargo theft supply chain space for the better part of my life. Since I was 20 years old, I worked in supply chain. So law enforcement does a great job. They do a fantastic job of keeping up with it because you can't predict it. It's a very difficult thing to predict on when the bad guys are going to strike. But I'd say if we didn't have the response that we have and the great law enforcement investigators that are so passionate about this, we looked at 3,000 thefts last year. If we didn't have this response that we have, we could be looking at 5,000 or 6,000 thefts. We have a great team. Our network here at CargoNet, we work with all the law enforcement task forces that focus on cargo theft and all the individual investigators out there that have that task assigned to them, and they do a really good job. It's a very complex crime to work. It's not like the old days where we just roll up on the trailer that's sitting at they left it at the truck stop. We roll up on it. We all high five because we just recovered $1 million. Now we've got to chase it through bill of lading manipulation. We've got to trace it cross dock to cross dock. There's 4 or 5 carriers involved, especially if you're looking at it on the fraud side. And then the product, just like in the legitimate supply chain, it's moving at light speed. So I can have this stolen in a crossdock on another trailer, out to sea, and then overseas in a matter of days. So it's moving at such a fast pace. But I got to give credit to the law enforcement community for doing such a great job tracking this. They're keeping up with the tools, the sophistication, the tools that law enforcement's using, second to none. They've really stepped up their game with technology to track these individuals, and I just can't give them enough credit for the work they're doing.
Yeah, a tall task indeed. You mentioned the organized crime aspect of this. That's been kind of a new wrinkle as well, right? And you kind of mentioned why they're doing it. They see the money there and they're taking advantage of it and trying to stay ahead of everybody. Looking at the Thanksgiving holiday weekend in particular, your report, CargoNet's report, has a few areas that you're looking at and warning people about, being hot spots. Can you talk a little bit about those places?
Sure. Well, your top three, your California, Texas, and Illinois. Arizona stepped up there. They're up in the top 10 now, too. Can't take our eye off of that. But California has twice as many thefts in California as the next few states do combined. So California is the hot spot. So what I look at when I first started working cargo theft 20 years ago, California, the LA basin, LA County looked like on a heat map, looked like a red basketball on the heat map. What's changed is that basketball has become more of an egg shape, and as industry moves east into the San Bernardino, Riverside area, so is the bad guys, right? Industry moves, and so do the bad guys. So now that heat map is expanding. And if you look at cargo theft 25 years ago, the hot commodity was tobacco and pharmaceuticals. Now look at all the electronic games that we have. We have virtual reality headsets, servers. I've got 6 monitors on my desk right now. Who had 6 monitors 25 years ago?
Yeah.
So the electronics, the things that people are buying, I grew up in the days when a console television was a luxury. Now everybody's got a TV on every wall in every room. So the more we ship, the more we buy that we pull through the supply chain, the more opportunistic it is for the bad guys.
Let's talk about stopping the bad guys on an individual level, because it is going to take vigilance from everybody out there to make sure that they're staying safe and making it harder for the criminals to target them. For someone listening to this right now, they're going to be working over the holiday weekend. What in particular would you say to them in terms of advice to keep them safe, to make sure their cargo stays safe, and again, to steer those bad guys somewhere else?
Well, I always say, it's a great question. I always say it's a team sport. Cargo theft prevention is a team sport, just like stealing it. It's organized crime. That's a team sport, too. So we've got to have a better team than they do. And the most important part of this team is the owner-operator, the truck driver that's out there, the line haul driver that's out there guarding the product. And we put a lot on the driver's shoulders. They've got a lot of responsibility. They're out there, and it's a holiday weekend. They can't make the delivery. So what are they going to do? Okay, well, find a safe place to park it. But if it gets stolen, we're going to hold you responsible. So here's what you have to do. You have to harden the target. First off, put a lock on the back door of the trailer. I can't tell you how many trailers I see just with a plastic or metal seal on the back and nothing else. Put a lock on the back. Wrap a chain through the load bars, the locking bars. Back the trailer up to a building. Back it up to another trailer. Back it up to a pole. Don't leave the key hidden in the truck somewhere where they can get in it and find the key that you left in case you lose yours. Do the little things that don't cost any money, but if you can send them to a different target. I always used to say, we can slow a thief down by 3 minutes, they'll give up and they'll go somewhere else. Do something. Park over a berm, like back up to a hill where they need a ladder to get to the back doors. If you go to the truck stop at night, the chances of having a backing accident are higher if you're trying to back in between two tractor trailers when you're fatigued, it's dark, pull in. You can always back out in the morning. If you can back in, you can back out. So pull in and back out when it's daylight. When you're pulled in, your back of your trailer is exposed to the travel lane inside the truck stop or whatever, wherever you are, it's exposed. The thief is less likely to go up to the back door of your trailer with everyone watching, cut the lock off, cut the seal, and load up a minivan full of electronic devices.
Yeah. Great advice. And as you pointed out, there's more of us than there are of them. If we all look out for each other, hopefully we can make it a bit harder for them and they'll move on to the next target. Keith, we appreciate it as always. CargoNet.com is the place to go for more information, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That was Keith Lewis of CargoNet. Landline Now is back in just a moment.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At TruckStop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Landline Now, welcome back. Cybersecurity has become a major concern among many, especially those in the trucking industry. Ben Wilkins and Joe Orr join me now. They are with the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. Gentlemen, I'd like to start by asking, with the advancements in technology over the years, how has cybersecurity changed?
It used to be just the larger companies were concerned about cybersecurity. So it's the logos you see day in and day out on the highways. They're like, oh yeah, they're going to go, that's who they're going after. I'm a smaller trucking operation. I don't have to worry about it. I'm 10 trucks, 5 trucks. I'm an owner operator. They're not going to come after me. And that's not true, no matter what size you are, because it is something that they can do so easily through different methods. And with AI, it doesn't take a lot of effort for the bad actors to get inside and actually compromise your system. And they do it based on revenue. So whether they go after a big logo, a small logo, everybody's vulnerable to that. So that's one of the biggest changes that we see is everybody's a target regardless of size. Ben?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, Joe, that, it's really a matter of these are crimes of opportunity, right? So these threat actors are out there scanning and looking for a soft target or for that low hanging fruit. And it doesn't matter if you're a large national carrier or you own 1 truck, 3 trucks, 10 trucks. If the hook gets set and the threat actor, gains a foothold in your organization, that's when they start to look around and see what your business is, what your revenue streams are, where those pressure points are, that they can, they can exert pressure on you to pay them either to keep your data private or to decrypt your data if you get locked up with a ransomware as a service attack. So it's really, the narrative has changed. It's not a specific targeting of these organizations. Typically it's a opportunistic crime because there's those core cybersecurity controls aren't in place, and it allows them to get an easy toehold.
Would you say you've seen kind of a shift in recent years, or has this always kind of been happening over the past decade, say decade and a half?
I think it's happened to a lesser degree in the past, but it's absolutely accelerated over the last couple of years. And like Joe alluded to, the wide scale release of some of these generative AI large language models has really lowered the bar of entry for the wannabe threat actor to craft a really believable phishing campaign. They don't even need English as a first language to craft a grammatically correct and accurate content for the industry that they're targeting. And, it's really turned it into a very easy and lucrative business, unfortunately, because that's really what it is. It's turned into a business model.
Just to add to that, I think that's one of the things as, a lot of times you see the logo, and I think we use it too, of the guy in the hood sitting in his basement, and he's the guy hacking into the network. And that may be true 10, 15 years ago. Now it's probably somebody in another country, whether it's China, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Russia. And it's run as a business, right? It's, they hire kids out of college. They recruit, they've got benefits, and their responsibility, just like a salesperson, is, hey, go get as many leads as you can. And what is a lead? It's somebody who's clicked on this link, and then they do the research to see, okay, what % revenue can I get out of this person? Is it worth pursuing? And then they decide whether or not to pursue, how hard to pursue, and how much money they can get out of them. It's almost like a branch. How far can I bend it before it breaks? And so it is run as a business. And we, cyber and cargo theft, there's cyber within cargo theft. So it's the same thing with cargo theft. It's not the cops and robbers stopping the trailer. It is being run as a business. And so the more sophisticated the business is, the smarter these guys are, the more organized they are, the harder it is to stop them, and the better we have to be, and the more educated that we have to be.
Now, in the transportation industry, specifically in trucking, what kind of security risks have you seen for truck drivers and owner-operators?
Joe, I'll jump in on that one.
Okay.
So as a driver, and this is kind of near and dear to me because I started in transportation as a driver many, many moons ago. And so one of the things that we need to keep in mind when we're speaking about cybersecurity concerns with the drivers and owner operators is, understanding that, just because there's free Wi-Fi doesn't mean that you want to use it necessarily, or you at least need to take some extra precautions if you're going to be using a free Wi-Fi network. Going in and out of different maintenance shops, right? Understanding that there are risks involved with a technician connecting a diagnostic device to your truck. Knowing to ask those questions and pick reputable maintenance facilities if you don't have a regular place that you're going, because if that device is also then going out and connecting on the internet, then it could potentially be, a threat vector for your truck. But then, it's also understanding what are the legitimate communication channels that your trading partners are going to use. So if you're taking brokered freight, understanding, does that broker communicate via email only, or do they communicate through a proprietary app or a text message? And then understanding how to handle and respond to out-of-channel communications, right? So that should be a red flag. If you always deal with this broker, even maybe over the phone, and then all of a sudden you get a text that says, there's been a change with your load, click here for details, that needs to be a red flag as the driver to say, well, wait a minute, that smells a little off to me. And take a second and make that phone call to your trusted contact and say, hey, did you just send me a text with a change to my load? Because we see that as a means of compromise. They'll spoof or create a very, very similar domain to the broker that you're working with. So you click a link that appears legitimate. It'll even have the right branding. It will have information about the load or where you're going or a new destination. And so unfortunately, that can be a step into a theft situation, a cargo theft situation, where maybe you're redirected to a cross-dock facility because there's a change to the load, with my air quotes here, when in fact you're being redirected to the criminal's cross-dock facility, or one that they're facilitating, to actually steal the load off the truck when you think you're really carrying it to the new destination. So really, it's about educating what the risks are, and that we all have to take a minute to think through, is there any red flag here? Just, is this expected behavior?
And I think just understand that it can happen to you. And, while the investment doesn't have to be significant, nobody expects an owner operator to have a huge, or have a cybersecurity team, or have a huge IT team. You do need to be cyber aware. And there's some things you can do from a hygiene perspective. Ben mentioned the open Wi-Fi, there's things that you can do, but, make sure that you are going through some cyber training. Also make sure there's some hygiene that you're going through. So, it's just like things that you do on the truck itself, as far as maintenance, there's maintenance that you should do, or steps that you can follow from a cybersecurity perspective, just like the maintenance on your vehicle.
I'm curious, as far as recommendations or advice, if someone does click on something that's suspicious, or they feel like their information may have gotten out, what do you recommend they do?
So I think, number one is making sure that you have a way to just run some checks on your device, right? And unfortunately, once Pandora's box is open, once our data is out there, there was a breach recently where I think it was something on the order of 50 million Social Security numbers included in a breach. So, we have to kind of operate on the assumption that our data is going to get breached in one way or another, whether it's through a healthcare provider or an insurance provider or previous employer or any number of possible ways. So you can't really recall the information, but you can you can restore from a trusted copy of your data. You can multi-factor authentication. So if your account credentials have been compromised, you can make sure that you put new passwords in place, add in multi-factor authentication, so just the credentials themselves aren't enough to get into the account. And then, it's about, I hate to say it's about preventing in the first place, because your question was specifically, what do you do after the fact? But if you think about minimizing the amount of information that's available to, just because you can store information somewhere doesn't mean necessarily that you want to. That makes sense. Yeah. And then, there's also, if it's a situation that's ongoing, the CISA, the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency, has resources available to assist. You can contact them directly. And then if it's fraudulent payments or anything on the financial, like ransom kind of situation, contacting your local FBI cybercrimes division, because they can actually come in and assist and involve Secret Service to try and track Bitcoin payments and things like that.
And just add to that, if you click on something and you get that feeling of, oh no, unplug it from the network, restore it from, do a restore, isolate it as soon as possible, change your passwords, kind of go through a checklist, but also have, no matter how small you are, have a business continuity plan, kind of think through, okay, if this happens, how do I keep running my business? How long can I stay down? Who do I need to reach out to? How do I get a hold of them? Can I get a hold of them? Do I have those phone numbers? I mean, we are so dependent anymore on our systems and the information that they have, kind of have all that, have an emergency. So it's kind of like a firebox. You have all this information in a firebox. Have a firebox, but have a business continuity plan. I think a lot of people believe, I don't need a business continuity plan. I'm a small owner operator. No matter how big, how small you are, you need a business continuity plan. You need to think about, hey, if this happened, could I still run my business? And I think, you have to plan for the worst. And hope it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, you want to make sure you isolate it, but also in the background, you can still run your business.
Yeah, because it's important to understand there's a process that starts when you click that link, right? It's not like you click that link and immediately your information's out there and the threat actors got your systems encrypted. I mean, there's a series of steps that they're going to go through, and you can, like Joe said, you can interrupt that at a number of points along that before you get to the point of either a ransomware situation or exfiltrating your data, taking your information off of your device. So it's about interrupting that flow before the final steps where they take action on your data.
I think anyone with kids may have been through this situation. I know I have. Dad, I just clicked on this link and you sprint into the room and I'm disable the Wi-Fi or unplug it because you want to isolate it. And that's the key. We talked to a really big carrier. Somebody had clicked on the link and they did isolate it fairly quickly. I think within a minute and a half, I want to say 90 seconds, and it didn't cause any damage. So it's just about isolating it as quickly as possible and then cleaning it up.
That was Ben Wilkins and Joe Orr with the National Motor Freight Traffic Association talking about cybersecurity. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Last week, we talked on the program about a regulatory effort that would require far greater transparency on the part of brokers. Here with more of what's happening on the issue is Bryce Mongeon of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Bryce, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you. Let's kind of start, before we get into the weeds of kind of other parts of this, with the proposed rule itself. I'm wondering if you could very briefly review what are the main points in this proposal to increase broker transparency?
Yes, so there's 4 main points, 4 main changes that FMCSA is proposing. And again, this is amending existing regulations that say all parties to a broker transaction have a right to review those records. The first change FMCSA is proposing is to require that all records be kept in an electronic format. We think that's something this day and age that should be pretty non-controversial and frankly makes a lot of sense. The second change is a little more nuanced or kind of in the weeds, but it proposes eliminating a distinction in the regulations between brokerage and non-brokerage services. And they say that this is something that goes back a number of years with how the agency and some of FMCSA's predecessor agencies had regulated brokers in the industry. But basically, it's sort of an outdated part of the regulations that they're proposing to update. The third change that they're proposing is that a broker would have to, it would make clear that a broker has a regulatory obligation to provide these records, a copy of these records, when it's requested by a carrier or somebody else who's a party to the transaction. And this is a little nuanced, but the important thing here is FMCSA is saying that brokers have a duty. They have an obligation under the regulations to do this. It's not simply a right that's held by carriers that they can waive. It's a duty imposed by the government that brokers have to abide by. And the fourth proposal is to require that the records be provided within 48 hours after it's requested. So to sum it up, basically the proposal would require that if a carrier requests a copy of these records, that it be given to them in an electronic format within 48 hours. And the regulation tries to make clear that the brokers have a regulatory obligation to comply with that.
Okay. Now, this was the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration basically reacting to a petition by OOIDA and also one from the Small Business and Trucking Coalition, I think.
Yep.
But the brokers group, the TIA, the Transportation Intermediaries Association, also petitioned FMCSA kind of on the other side of this. What did they ask for?
So this is going back to 2020. So as you mentioned, OOIDA and SBTC petitioned around May 2020. And then in turn, TIA petitioned in August 2020 to basically say, let's get rid of these regulations altogether. So instead of improving them and instead of abiding by regulations that are in place, TIA just wanted them done away with. And their argument was that, these are a vestige of a bygone era when the government heavily regulated the transportation industry, and they have no place in our modern, competitive, transparent transportation system. As is kind of obvious now, FMCSA is moving forward with the petitions that we had given them, but back in 2023, FMCSA denied TIA's petition, and part of the reason was they said that these regulations are important for the promotion of fairness and efficiency in the transportation industry. And, as I'm sure maybe we'll touch on here, or definitely as this conversation moves forward, about FMCSA's proposal to, improve broker transparency, that's going to be a theme that comes up again. So FMCSA didn't think it was in the, public's best interest or the transportation industry's best interest to eliminate these because it would have a negative impact on fairness and efficiency.
It's interesting. One of the things you said there that they contended was that today's transportation industry is transparent, and they used that word again in a recent statement about this proposed rule. But I'm kind of curious what part they think is actually transparent right now.
Yeah, there's obviously for small carriers that have been working with brokers and have been denied access to this information, there's not a whole lot that's transparent about it. I think their TIA, and some others are trying to misdirect on this issue. And what they're saying is, for our publicly traded companies, you can go out and see our earnings reports and see the presentations we give, to investors, so you can learn how our business is doing and what kind of margins we're making. There's plenty of transparency there. They're also claiming that just by going on load boards and seeing the different loads and the different rates that are available, there's plenty of transparency into the market and what sort of rates are being offered. So sure, there's some transparency. That is I guess a form of transparency, but it's distracting from the fact that there are existing regulations in black and white that have been ignored for far too long that would provide very specific and important transparency for carriers who are working with brokers. While kind of the earnings reports and the rates posted to a public load board might be helpful in some ways, it still doesn't address some of the issues that these regulations address.
Okay. Now, OOIDA has put out a call to action on this topic, and I'm wondering if you can walk us through what is the association asking truckers to do?
So we're really asking truckers to share their experience on these regulations and why broker transparency is important to them. And I think at this initial step, we're still, I should make clear that we're going to continue to encourage participation from our members and from truckers. We've kind of gotten through the proposal at this point, but we're still kind of formulating our feedback, and we will certainly be sharing more information with our members and people who are signed up for our call to actions. So at this initial point, if you want to go out and share your experience, share why transparency is important, and share why it's important that you have access to these records, that's absolutely something you should do now. But I think moving forward, too, the comment period is open for about 60 days from now. We will be providing more information, a little more specifics for other folks who maybe want a little bit more help in crafting their comments. But it's so important that drivers and carriers stay involved with this, because that is how this is going to be moved forward. That's the only way that this is going to be moved forward, is if the agencies continue to hear about this.
Well, and I know that going back to a different rulemaking, when the rulemaking on speed limiters, our proposal on that came out, truckers made, I think, in excess of 16,000 comments, and it really did have an effect on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know sometimes it's easy to get cynical, and sometimes it's easy to feel like we're on here at the radio talking about these same issues over and over, and nothing ever gets done. And certainly some things, not everything, we're going to win 100% on everything. But this is one of those issues, and speed limiters is another issue where participation makes a difference. By gumming up FMCSA with over 15,000 comments saying this is a bad idea, that forced them to take their time and work through these comments. Going back on this broker transparency issue, going all the way back to 2020 when you had truckers protesting in front of the White House, then you had these petitions to make improvements to the rules and comments following up on that, we can see that incremental progress. So it does not get done. It will not get done if people don't participate and don't make their voices heard. So I know we sound a little bit like a broken record when we say this, but getting involved does make a difference. In this case, it's helped to make it move things in the right direction, but we know there's a lot more work to be done and to make sure the potential final rule on this is even better.
Excellent. Well, Bryce, we're out of time, but thank you very much for all the information.
Yes, thank you.
I've been talking with Bryce Mongeon of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, we will provide a direct link to where you can look at this proposed regulation and make your comments at our website, landlinenow.com. Again, that's at our website, landlinenow.com. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.